Hi, my name is Crystal Seidel, and this is my daughter Emmy. She is 11 months old today, and I'm going to talk about our breastfeeding journey. When I was 20 weeks pregnant, I found out that Emmy had Down syndrome and congenital heart disease. She's my only girl. She has 5 older brothers, and this news was really hard to take, obviously. I was told that babies with Down syndrome often have trouble, challenges with feeding. Her cardiologist even brought up what the plan would be if she wasn't gaining weight. And so even with all of this knowledge, even though I knew what everyone was telling me that it would be a challenge, I was like, I'm still going to breastfeed her because I breastfed all of my other babies. Looking back at that time, I would say that I was determined, but more than anything, I was naive, and I didn't actually know how challenging this would be for us. She was born on September 1st, about 2 weeks before my due date. She came into the world really fast. Within 20 minutes of us arriving at the hospital, she was born. I was only able to hold her for about 2 minutes before the nurses took her to the NICU. Her initial APGAR score was an 8, and then a few minutes later it was a 9. And during my pregnancy, I had been told that as long as she was not in distress, then I would be able to hold her for that first golden hour. Unfortunately, they didn't uphold that, and she was only taken 2 minutes after she was born. As soon as the umbilical cord stopped pulsing, assessed her and said that she needed to go to the NICU. I was really thankful that everything had happened so fast because I didn't have time to get an epidural, which means I was able to get up and start walking around really quickly. And because I had pretty much preserved most of my energy, I was able to go and be with her about 40 minutes after she was born. While I was getting ready to go, and they had her in the NICU without us, they were checking on her blood sugars and stuff like that, and of course, because I hadn't had a chance to latch her yet, she had very low blood sugar. So instead of asking us what we would like to do, they started IV fluids. Really unfortunate because we could have latched her, or even done the glucose paste or something, given a formula, something to, give her something besides just going straight to IV fluids, because once she was on the IV fluids, then they were reluctant to take her off, and that meant that she was just going to have to stay in the NICU longer than just the initial testing. I kind of stayed on top of the doctors, asking them what we could do to wean her off. It still took a few days, so to wean her down. And the first latch was a little rough whenever I joined her in the NICU, but she actually started doing better throughout the week. I had been able to pump. I had been able to pump, so she got some really good colostrum for that first feed. I put her skin to skin and gave her colostrum through a bottle. I also asked the nurses about finger feeding or using an SNS system or something along those lines so that we could get milk into her, because unfortunately before my milk came in, I wasn't getting very much colostrum after that initial pumping, and so I was trying to figure out what else we could do to get calories in her so that she didn't have to stay on IV fluids. So I was told no for all of those things, and I asked about donor breast milk, and that was a no also because they reserve that for preemies, which I understood. So basically, she was born the day before Labor Day, and it was a Sunday, and there was just no help because the lactation consultants weren't there, and speech and OT weren't there either. So I kind of felt alone because I didn't have any help in that area, and the nurses and doctors that we had on our team at that time weren't really concerned on how to get her food through her mouth instead of on IV fluids. So she was born on Sunday. On Wednesday, my milk finally came in, and we got a new team. We were put in a different section of the NICU, given a new doctor. And this doctor was a very big proponent of breastfeeding. So she came in and helped change our plan and made sure OT got in there and lactation as quickly as possible. She changed our whole experience there. She made sure that I could have a room to stay with Emmy because they had already discharged me from the mother-baby unit. So we got a private room in the NICU, and there was also a hurricane coming, so they wouldn't give me an extra room anywhere else. So I was really grateful that she secured that for us. The occupational therapist helped us work on bottle skills, as well as modified SNS system and finger feeding. And then Emmy actually developed jaundice. We were able to get her off the IV fluids, but then she developed jaundice. And so we had to stay a little longer so she could be under the blue lights. And the lactation helped me get a better latch for her and to use the nipple shield, and just, helped me with my technique, because even though I had nursed 5 other babies, every baby is different, and mamas still need help with breastfeeding, and I had never breastfed a baby with such high needs before, or such special needs before. I was really grateful to have those people in the hospital to help me. Being in the NICU with her was one of the hardest experiences for me. It made me question my mothering skills. It made me question myself a lot because I felt like I didn't have any control over her care, and I was trying to juggle all of the things and make sure that the milk was being brought on time, and that was the other thing. Once I was pumping and giving them milk, I had to ask for my milk back in order to give her a bottle, and sometimes I was told it wasn't time yet, even though I could clearly see that she was hungry. So that was very frustrating to have to go by whatever they were saying. And in my experience, I have always nursed my babies on demand and been there, whenever they needed to nurse. It was frustrating to be told no and to be told, oh, it's not time yet, when I could see what my baby needed. There was even a time whenever a nurse brought us formula and said it was breast milk, and then my husband had to correct her and say, no, this is not breast milk. And she argued with him, and he was like, listen, we're not new parents, we know what we're doing, and this is not breast milk. So there's just some things, in the NICU that were really hard. And I do appreciate the fact that they were there to take care of her if there was an emergency. The NICU is a good place for sick babies. Finally, we were able to come home, which was both scary and exciting. It was up to us then to watch and see how she did. Our at-home feeding routine was very time-consuming, and I had little time or energy for anything else. Every 2 hours, I would nurse her, and then I would pump. The first week at home, it seemed to go well, but then at 2 weeks old, she started to have more heart failure symptoms. So then it was hard for her to stay awake to nurse, and she she was struggling. Her heart was working too hard, so she wasn't getting enough calories, and we had to keep going in for weight checks and to see if, you know, all of the things that we were trying were working. It's hard to get her to have a good latch because of her low muscle tone and her energy. Once we realized that she wasn't gaining weight, we changed our routine and started finger feeding her. And this would still take a long time because nursing took a really long time, and then finger feeding took a long time. So basically, once I would get done with the routine, I would have just a few moments to rest or eat or take a shower and take care of myself, and then I would have to start the whole routine again. I had many pumping mishaps and just feeling like a zombie the whole time because I was so tired. And then on top of that, I was taking her to occupational therapy to try to get her strength up so that she could be a more efficient nurser. She was born at 8 pounds 1 ounce, and then when we left the hospital, she was about 6.5 pounds. Being home, we did the frequent weight checks because we knew that surgery was going to be needed for her heart. We were trying to get her to gain weight. Whenever we would go to the pediatrician, they would do a weighted feed sometimes if she was able to nurse there. But I was really disheartened to see that with all the things I was doing, she just wasn't gaining weight. And then we started fortifying breast milk with formula. When I would pump, I would add formula and then would feed it to her that way. And all of those things, it wasn't working. So by the time she was a month old, she still hadn't gotten back up to her birth weight. She was admitted to the hospital. When we were at the hospital, the doctors placed an NG tube, and that's the one that goes through your nose and straight down into her stomach. The first time that she had a feed that way, I just sat and cried tears of relief because I was finally able to hand over the reins a little bit. I had felt like it was all on me, and no matter how much I tried, I was spinning my wheels and she wasn't gaining any weight. So the NG tube helped her to get those calories in, and that was a huge relief for me. While we were there, we waited to see if she would do well with the tube feeding, and she did. So then we scheduled the G-tube surgery, kind of got us ready a little bit for heart surgery, right? And the morning that she was to have her surgery, I was sitting in the pre-op area with her, just snuggling her and getting in all that love before she had to go back. And a nurse was checking me in. Whenever he checked me in, he said, "Oh, she's here for failure to thrive." And I actually hadn't heard that term yet, so that was just a knife to the heart because I felt like I had failed her. And I know that's not true. Now, I know that now, but at the time, I felt like it was my fault that she wasn't thriving. And so that was a hard thing to sit with by myself while she went back for surgery, but she did well. The surgery went great. The recovery went well. Hi, honey. Then we, had to learn how to do G-tube, which was really a good thing, but I've kind of had a love-hate relationship with it. We've had so many mishaps where she has pulled out her button, or she has unplugged something and then the milk leaks everywhere. Luckily, she was not a baby who was throwing up a lot with the G-tube feeding, which I know sometimes that happens. So after she had her G-tube in, we were able to get her to gain some weight, which was really, really good to see. A few days later, after we got home from the hospital from that stay for her G-tube surgery, we had a cardiology appointment, and at that appointment they informed me that they had already scheduled her heart surgery, which I did not know, and it was for the next week. So I had to go home and try to scramble and get everything ready for her for this long hospital stay. The morning before she was supposed to go in for her surgery, she tested positive for RSV, and so then we had to postpone surgery for 6 weeks. Then we just quarantined ourselves and stayed away from people and just waited for her to feel better. And it was getting closer and closer to Christmas, so we did as many Christmas activities with our kids as we could. The only thing about that was so she had ended up in the PCICU, the pediatric cardiac ICU, when she had RSV. And when she didn't need as much respiratory support, we were able to go down to the children's floor and stayed there a few days until she went home. During this time, she had a couple of desaturations of oxygen, which set off alarms and scared everybody. Unfortunately, one of those happened right after she had nursed. I had breastfed her, and then I think I was changing her, and then she had another one, and the nurse who was who was in the room with us decided that it was because of the breastfeeding, and then told the doctors that, and then she was placed on NPO, which is she couldn't have anything by mouth until her surgery. So for 6 weeks I wasn't allowed to nurse her. So that was another gut punch, because I knew that 6 weeks was such a huge chunk of time for her development, and we had already been making gains, and I felt like those gains were going to be lost, and that all the hard work that we had done was going to be for nothing because I didn't think that she would go back to nursing. We were waiting for heart surgery and trying to do whatever we could to make sure she didn't have an oral aversion. I worked with OT to come up with a plan, and we did passy dips and different mouth exercises to stretch her lips and just to tolerate positive touch so that she didn't freak out once she was allowed to eat by mouth again and then not want anything near her. So on December 13th, she went in for heart surgery. To repair an atrioventricular septal defect. The surgery went well, and so did her recovery. I wasn't able to hold her for 3 days after her surgery, and it was probably the longest 3 days of my life to just be able to, stand next to her and not pick her up. That was really hard. Once I could hold her again, occupational therapy and lactation came to help me get her to latch again, and we enjoyed a quiet Christmas at home. We tried new nipple shields and just enjoyed getting to know her better, because after her surgery, she woke up to the world. The second day after her surgery was the first time I'd ever seen her smile. And now that she had energy and her heart wasn't working so hard, she was awake more. So she just blossomed. We finally got to see her personality start growing, and it was wonderful. January was a really quiet month for us. We stayed home and enjoyed our time as a family and just kind of stayed away from people in order to keep Emmy safe. We spent a lot of time skin to skin, and I just kept offering the breast to her even though she didn't latch for very long. We decided that any little time that she spent on the breast was good. she also developed a preference for the left breast. She didn't really want to do the right breast. It just made her fussy. I mostly nursed her on the left and then just pumped on the right. Well, I pumped on both sides, but the right side had to be emptied only by pumping because she wouldn't do it. In February, she got sick again and then ended up in the hospital for respiratory support. And then in March, we entered into quarantine, a global pandemic. So then we were at home again. In February, we were, doing all the OT, all the therapy and stuff. And then in March, we had to pull that back. So this meant a lot of time with me trying to do therapy at home. For the last few months, that's been the case. And we had to push back physical therapy as well. Late February, early March, she was finally able to come off of sternal precautions. So that helped to not feel like she was so fragile and, worried that somehow we were going to hurt her. But I just kept putting her to the breast, and then she decided that she did like the right side also. And so that was a really awesome day when she started nursing on the right side more. And now she actually prefers that side because it's a better producer. So she likes that she doesn't have to work so hard to get a letdown on that side. Whenever she turned 7 months old, we were allowed to start giving her solids. So we went to an OT appointment outside, and the OT kind of just talked me through what would be the best way to introduce solid foods to her. So now she's eating solids 3 times a day, and she really likes it. She's also still being G-tube fed, and that is a very slow weaning process. So we're not really sure how long she'll be on the G-tube, but she gets 4 feedings a day through that, and then continuous at night, which is really helpful because she doesn't wake up hungry. So she's a really good sleeper, which has been a big blessing from all of the stuff that we've gone through. But I'm still pumping every day and putting that through the G-tube, and then putting her to the breast as much as possible. The next step is to try to get her to drink from a cup. The cardiologist wants her to be getting about 75% of her nutrition by mouth before they're willing to take out the G-tube. And right now it's about, I would say 15%. So we still have a ways to go, but I know that it won't always be like this. She won't always need a G-tube. And I'm just really proud of us for all of the progress that we have made. And we've tried every feeding imaginable, so now we can help others. It's been a really hard and long journey, but it was all worth it because Emmy is amazing, and I'm so honored to get to be her mom. I learned that even though our journey looked different, I was still achieving my goal of breastfeeding her. And that was okay. Like, it was okay that it was different because we were still doing it. We're still breastfeeding. This experience has changed me for the better and helped me to see how strong I actually am and how strong she is too. But I couldn't have done this alone. I had multiple people alongside helping me. I had my friends from the La Leche League. My youngest son, Elon, was little. He also had some struggles, and I attended multiple La Leche League meetings, every one that I could, and made some really good friends there that helped me through my feeding journey with Emmy. There was a mom who exclusively pumped for her daughter for over a year, and so she was a big resource and a big help and encouragement for me. And there was also a mom that I met whose son was G-tube fed, so she was there alongside me to help as well. And then there's the incredible leaders of the Leche League who were there for me and who are also friends. And so they offered a lot of encouragement and advice. And there was my doula, who is also a breastfeeding counselor, and she was with me every step of the way through my pregnancy and through my journey afterwards. And I wouldn't have been able to make it without her. I had support from family and friends. And of course, there's all of the doctors and nurses and specialists and therapists and everybody who helped us along the way. And there was so many encouraging medical professionals that we got to work with, and I'm forever grateful for her surgeon, her heart surgeon, and for the doctor who helped us in the NICU. And so I wouldn't have ever been able to do this by myself, and I'm forever grateful for the support that my family received. So that's our journey. Thanks for listening.